Hi, hello to everybody. Let me plug in my mic so you can hear me a little bit more. But good afternoon and good evening to everybody. This is Aurelia Davis, the educator's educator, coming to you this week on this Thursday in the middle of June 22nd. Summer started yesterday. And in the meantime, we're just being active in the summer. And just coming to you a little bit about understanding that teachers, there's still a way for you to connect with your students. I'm sure if you have like emails and things like that, for you to just reach out and tap into those particular children that were in your class this past year. There's nothing wrong with that. And it's especially good if the parents are looking for activities for their children to do. We just can't assume all children are in day camp or day camps or attending camps, overnight camps, throughout the summer. And so the parents have a tendency of trying to find things for their child to do. Well, I'm going to mention one thing today, and basically what would be good is that if you would reach out to your students, your former students and students that you had this past year, and tell the parents, reaching out to the parents and starting them on a reading program. Reading is something that that should be done all year long. It's a good passage of time. It is a good passage of time, meaning that a child can always, when we was growing up, pick up a book. That's what we were told, pick up a book. But we know that that is even more so needed now because our children have a tendency of just doing visual things. They look at videos, they look at the television, they are looking at things on their phone. But to pick up a book in their hands, and to be able to read or to read something and get interested in reading is something that's basically satisfying. It is also captivating. It is very, very. You develop a sense of what you call it. I'm trying to think of the word. Well, it's relaxing. That's the word I'm looking for. It's relaxing, and so for to require that a child reads about 30 minutes a day, it's nothing wrong with that. It's nothing wrong with that. And you would be surprised that you start off with 30 minutes and then before it's over with, the child is reading, reading, reading. This is what we did when we were growing up. My mom made sure that we had library cards. And it was so interesting because our library, we had a library van. This mobile unit would come to a certain part of our neighborhood, and we would just take books back that we had gotten the week before. It would come like every Thursday, and we all year long we would take those books back because that was part of our entertainment. That's what we did. And even during the summertime, I that's how I became such an avid reader. And don't mind telling you, my favorite book was Nancy Drew Mysteries. I loved Nancy Drew Mysteries. And then when my daughter was growing up, she loved the Babysitters Club. So every child or every group of children throughout the ages have a certain group of books that they love. Of course, a lot of children are getting into the Harry Potter books. When I was teaching, I saw these children coming in with these books about that thick, and I said, "Oh my goodness, what are you reading?" And they got into Harry Potter, and they could not put it down. Well, this is a summer. During the summer, if you as an educator still have like access to some of the emails that belong to your children, just shoot an email every once in a while. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Shoot an email to the parents and give some book suggestions. Give some book suggestions, of the books that you think their children would love to read. Love to read. In fact, it would have been even better is like during the school year when you notice children picking up certain books. I kept a variety of genres in my classroom library: mysteries, picture books. Then we had the graphic novels. They started getting into that, even though they were third grade, but they love those types of books. So you as an educator, there's nothing wrong with, if you still have access to some of those emails, just to shoot a email to your parents and let them know and give them some book suggestions that their children can read during the summer. Well, uh, being in Chicago Public Schools, and being Chicago Public Library has always had a summer reading program for children, which I think is very, very good. And what happens is that parents can take them to the local library and they sign up. And I believe that they may have like a particular genre that they want the children to read, and they come back and they do activities with that particular book. If, say, for instance, I'll just give it out, babysitter's book, and then they would sit the children around and let them give their own experience of reading the books. What did they find interesting? Of course, you go into the title and the illustrations and the characteristics of some of the characters in the books. What was your favorite character? What character you did not like? Those types of things. And it brings up and allows children to have a lot of critical thinking skills. It allows them to practice their critical thinking skills, which is very, very good. I would even say that during the time when I was while I was teaching, some of my children read so much that eventually I told them, I said, well, you know what, you could write. You can write a book. Why don't you write a book, or give a different ending to a book you just read? Or or put another character, write about another character that in this particular story from a book that you just read. So it's just all kinds of interesting activities that you can easily bring into summer reading for children that are basically may not have anything to do, or either their parents are not necessarily putting them into day camp and everything. And then to make it a requirement that you read at least about 100 minutes a week, or 40 minutes a week, how many minutes, they want them to read. And then what you would do is that as the children, even if you were able to set up another, set up with another family and whatever, and have the children competing to read the same book and see who would finish first, and then pulling together and having a reading party or a library party or a book party. All of these things, making reading interesting is always a good event for children to do. Good event for children to do and to have, because reading is something. And it's interesting because when that child picks up that book, where they are not looking at something online, or or on their laptop or in their phone and everything, to have that book in their hand and to follow the words, is very good. And then if the parents suggest that the parents pick up the same book and read along with their children, do some read alouds throughout the day, do some read alouds throughout the week, so that the child you can read along with your child, and then you'll be able to discuss the characters and things that were happening in the books, the different events, the setting, where did it take place, how did that, let's draw a picture of what that setting looked like. Is Can we find a setting where we live now? If it was a country, it was a different or in the country or in the city. Did it take place in the country? Did it take place in the city? And just bring out all things. Books are like recipes. You can pull out anything and everything out of a book to make it interesting to children. And then if the child decides that they have already decided the types of books they like to read, then continue to build that library up in your home, but I like the idea of a child going to a library and deciding and looking and see how a library works. Of course, they have put a lot of technology in place of regular card catalogs and things like that, but the child still has to have a library card. With that library card, they are basically directed to a particular part of the library where they would find the books that they like, which is good. So it turns around, and what ends up happening is that the child gets acclimated to loving a library. They get acclimated. And so it's something that basically you want to go on throughout the year. Even when school is not in session, a child should be attending a library at least once or twice a week. And then parents, you can do some read alouds. You know, what who said that bedtime stories you had to stop? Who said that bedtime stories had to stop? No, they don't have to stop. To read to a child at bedtime is still a good thing to do. It's still a great thing to do, to read a bedtime story, especially the little ones, the babies. And if they don't know about it, you have to bring it up. You have to bring it up and say, I'm going to read you a bedtime story, and you'll be surprised how they start they start, before they go to bed, they'll go and look in the library and hand you the book. And usually it's their favorite story that they want you to read over and over and over again. But that's okay, because what eventually ends up happening, that particular child or that particular toddler starts mimicking what's going to happen in the book, and they can tell you exactly what's going to happen in the book. They'll mimic the words, they'll say different things, and so on and so forth. So reading to toddlers and reading to babies is the best thing to do. I remember a couple of weeks ago there was a bookstore going out of business, and my daughter took great grandson, and took him to the library. He's only a toddler, but she put him down on the floor, and he was able to go around, and he was looking at books. And so he was picking a book up, and she said, "Do you like that?" And so him not having the vocabulary in place yet, she told him what it was, but he was able to pick up a book, and he was able to look at the book, and he was starting to turn the pages and different things like that. So starting them out early with the love of books is a very, 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 very important thing to do. Very important thing to do. And we just want to keep it going, keep it going. I am if I think back about all of the bookstores that have basically closed during the years that I was coming up and everything, because a lot of people have gone to Kindles and they're doing e-readers and audio books and whatever, which I do love. I do love audio books, but at the same time, I still love the to hold a book in my hand and to flip through the pages and see the written word. It has a tendency of making you pay attention a little bit more to what the words are saying. And the good thing about it is that you can always go back. If there's something you didn't understand about a particular passage, you can always go back and read that passage again. And sometimes the second time you read it, you get a different understanding. You get a different understanding and loving about characters and the settings of books. And I have a tendency of loving books that took place during slavery time. I love the books about slavery, about history, and different individuals that grew up during those eras. That's what I love to read. That's exactly what I love to read. And love the mysteries. I do love mysteries. I do love mysteries. So this is Aurelia Davis, just coming to you for a little while. Like I showed before, I am reading myself with Oprah's book club, and finding that book. It's a real thick book. I don't know how long it's going to take me to get through it, but it's a good book. It's holding my attention, and so I have even given myself a deadline to read so many hours per week. So many hours per week where I just sit down and just concentrate on what I'm reading and what I have in front of me and what I'm reading in front of me. And it has gotten me back to the point where I'm not so lazy about just listening to a book, or listening to a book on Audible and whatever, which I got into very heavily. And I still do that because I love listening to books in my car. But to just get back to reading the word and holding a book in my hand, that's a love that I've always had, and I will continue to love it. So check out the special reading programs within your local library. If you're in Chicago Public Libraries do have a reading program. And then just go online and see some of the books, making sure that they're probably age appropriate. And parents, if you are so interested in the type of books, sometimes you can read the back cover and see exactly what the book might be about. But if you are cautious about what your child reads, sometimes you need to read it first to see if it's an appropriate read for your child. It's nothing wrong with that. See if it's an appropriate read for your child. And just have fun with it. Have fun with it. I heard a couple of years ago, I think before the pandemic, there was a group of individuals, parents that had a reading club. They had a reading club for their children for the summertime. They decided they didn't want them to necessarily go to camp, but they developed a reading club, and the children were reading. Girls and boys, they would pick the books that they wanted to read, and then at the end of the summer, they put on a play about that particular book. So it turned into a real fun activity, real fun activity, and that's what we want children to do. We want children to read, but we want them to live through what they are reading, for their imagination to just go wild, for their imagination just to go wild, and for them to put themselves into the settings or put themselves into the characters and become those characters. It builds up all kinds of positivity within a child. It builds up strength. It builds up vocabulary. We're talking about vocabulary and critical thinking and skills, and all of these things take place when a child reads. This is what happens when a child reads. So you just want to keep books, 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 books in front of these children so that they'll know that there's life beyond life beyond a video. Life beyond a video. Well, to hear more about me, this is Aurelia Davis, the Educator's Educator. Feel free to go over to my website at aureliadavis.com to look at some of the offerings that I'm still offering even during the summertime. Take the time. I have two books out also, and working on my third book, hope to be published by the fall, no later than Christmas. I'm doing a series. It was A New Land, John David's legacy, and it happened in Lawndale. So these are three African American stories that sort of run together, post-slavery time, coming up to maybe 1971 or something like that. And it's on my website. So if you decide that you want to look at my books or read my books or get copies of my books, just go to aureliadavis.com and you'll see them there. Take care. Have a great one. I'll talk to you next week. Bye bye.